Welcome back, students. Welcome to biology classes. Today we are going to see 12 science biology and we are going to see the next topics of chapter number 15, that is biodiversity and conservation, right? We have already covered the previous topics of this chapter. If you wish to check my previous videos, then you can check my YouTube channel for it. So let's start with today's lecture. Today we are going to see about the importance of biodiversity and the loss of biodiversity. So first we will be focusing on the first part, that is the importance of biodiversity. So what is the importance of biodiversity on Earth? So there is no exact answer to this question, right? But there are so many experiments which have been conducted by many ecologists who have demonstrated that a system with greater biodiversity is more stable and has greater productivity, right? So here, when we are talking about the biodiversity's importance, normally when we are talking about the importance of biodiversity, we cannot answer the exact like we cannot answer or there is no exact any answer of this question, but there are so many experiments, right, which ecologists have performed, right, in order to check, in order to see whether what type of biodiversity is there and whether that biodiversity is more stable, right, and has more productivity, right. Now, in the long run, biodiversity is related with overall health of our ecosystem and survival of humans race on the earth. Now, this biodiversity is related, right, with the overall health of our ecosystem. So if the biodiversity is not proper, then the ecosystem will also not work properly. So none another, biodiversity is related to the ecosystem's health as well as the survival of the human race, because if there will be no biodiversity which is observed on the earth, then the food chain, the food web, and other trophic levels where the energy levels or the energy should be maintained, right, that is not going to be maintained, and for this reason biodiversity is very important. Now there are characteristics, right, there are several characteristics of a stable community, that like what are the main characteristics that yes, this community can be said as a stable community. So the first is it should not show much variation in productivity from year to year. So the community in which no not much variation is observed in the productivity, that is the one of the best characteristic of a stable community, right. Second point says that it must be either resistant or resilient to occasional disturbances, right. Now normally whatever seasonal changes or other disturbances which have been occurring in the nature or environment, right, this stable community should be resistant to all those disturbances, right. Third says that it must be resistant to invasion by alien species, right. Now if this stable community, right, if any other species is coming and residing in the same area, then also the community which is already residing in that place, right, that must, that all the, or that stable community should be resistant, right, or that community should be resistant if any of the alien species, that is if any of the other species are or coming and living, then also they should be resistant with those type of different species. So this is the third the characteristic of a stable community. This can be asked in 2 marks, that what are the characteristics of a stable community, right. So first is it should not show much variation in the productivity. Second is it should be resistant and resilient to occasional disturbances. And the third says that they should be resistant by the alien species, right? Now, this is about the importance of the biodiversity on the earth. Now we are going to see about the loss of biodiversity, and this is one of the most important topic of this chapter, right? Now, due to human activities, the natural wealth is getting lost rapidly. Now, you know that due to the human activities, right? Several, so many natural wealth, that is resources as well as the species, they are getting extincted, right? That is, we are losing them, right, in a very rapid way, right? So now the last 20 years have seen the loss of 27 species. So from last 20 years, right, that is last 2 decades, we have lost 27 species, right? That means now this 27 species are not observed. So that means that we have lost 27 species which were initially present, right? Now, what are the causes of this losses, right? So now we are going to see what are the reasons and what are the causes that why this species are extincted or why the species are lost, right? So first is the habitat loss and fragmentation, right? So habitat loss means whatever place where the particular species lives, that is the habitat, right? So this is the major cause for the loss of biodiversity. So habitat is when lost, as well as fragmentation. This is the major cause through which the loss of biodiversity is observed. Now habitat destruction is caused by human activities, right? Normally, if the deforestation is carried out, right, this all activities are done by humans only, right? So activities like deforestation, then like increased amount of pollution, or this all things can lead to the habitat destruction, right? And habitat of what? That species which are living in it. So the species habitat is being destructed or destroyed by the human activities like deforestation as well as the increased pollution amount, right? And this leads to the loss of many plants as well as animals. So this is the first cause, that due to the habitat loss and fragmentation, the species are being lost, or we are losing the biodiversity. Second is the over exploitation, right? Over exploitation says that the humans, due to their greed and increased exploitation of natural resources, have contributed to endangerment of commercially important species of plants and animals, right? So here, um, like the over exploitation, that means humans. Now if you know that in the forest, if a plant is useful in the formation of medicines, then humans, they are going to use that plant again and again, right? So they are over exploiting the natural resources, right? And this is leading to the loss of those important species of plants as well as the animals. And the example of it is the species such as stellar sea cow and passenger pigeon have been extinct due to overexploitation by humans. Now, passenger pigeon, you might know about this, right? You might be already knowing about this. That initially, when there were no telephones or the mobile phones at that time, they were using the pigeon to send the message from one place to the another place, right? So here nowadays you cannot see this passenger pigeon, as the people only, that is the humans, have only used them in a over exploited way, right? For this reason nowadays this passenger pigeons are not seen, right? So this is second cause, that is over exploitation. The third cause is the alien species invasion, right? Alien species, that is the those type of species which are not used to or which you are not knowing, right? And invasion, that means entrance of those alien species. So the unintentional or deliberate introduction of alien species cause the declination of the indigenous species. Indigenous species means those species which are living in that area, right? Now, if any of the other species which are more stronger than them, and if they are invading in that area, right, then what happened? The indigenous species, that is the species which were already living there, they are declined or they are removed out, right? And the example of it is Nile perch introduced in Lake Victoria led to the extinction of more than 200 species of cichlid fish in the lake, right? So a fish which is known as cichlid fish, it was present in the lake, right? That is the of the Lake Victoria. And when the Nile perch was introduced inside that lake, at what happened at that time? What happened? As the Nile perch was introduced, this fish were extincted, right? So and all the species of this fish were extincted out. So as the new species are being entering inside or introduced inside the habitat, at that time what happens, the extinction may take place, right? So this is the third cause, and the fourth and the last cause is co-extinction, right? Co-extinction means what? So when a plant or animal becomes extinct, another plant or animal which is dependent on it in an obligatory way also becomes extinct. Right now here we can take the example of plants. That say there are several plants which are male as well as female, right? And some plants are there where the male and female both are different. So at that time co-extinction means, if from the male and female, if they are different from each other, but few plants and animals they are there, right? If one dies, then the other also dies, right? So this way the extinction, if one is extincted, then the partner of that particular plant or animal is also being extincted, right? And the example of it is, in case of plant pollinator mutualism, the extinction of one partner will eventually lead to the extinction of other also. So just like the plants and as well as animals, if one partner is being extincted, then the second partner is also being extincted out, right? So this is about the fourth type, fourth cause of the loss of biodiversity, and that is co-extinction. So these are the four main causes. First is habitat loss and fragmentation. Second is overexploitation. Third is alien species invasion. And the fourth is co-extinction, right? So here we complete this topic, and now we are going to see the last topic of this chapter, and that is biodiversity conservation. That how you can conserve the biodiversity. You see, we saw about the biodiversity, we saw about the patterns of patterns of biodiversity, then we saw about that what is the importance of biodiversity, then we saw that how the biodiversity has been lost, right? And now we are going to see that how you can conserve the biodiversity, right? So there are several reasons for conserving the biodiversity, and the first is, many commercially important products are obtained by nature, such as food, fiber, wood, and countless industrial products. So, why you need to conserve the biodiversity? In order to obtain several products from the nature, right? So, first is food, then fiber, then wood, then industrial products, right? So, this all for getting all these products from the nature, what you need to do is you need to conserve the biodiversity, right? Next is, there are certain activities and products which cannot be accomplished without the help of nature, such as production of oxygen and pollination. So second is what, there are several activities, right, which needs the properance, or which needs the nature, help of the nature in order to produce the oxygen as well as carry out the pollination process. Third is the intangible benefits, such as aesthetic pleasure are derived from nature. Now you know that whenever you feel depressed or something, then you feel like going alone in a place where the proper nature is there. So that is also, there are so many benefits of aesthetic pleasure also, which has been derived from the nature. The fourth point about why we should conserve the biodiversity is that conserving the biodiversity, right, that is species we share our planet with, and passing this rich legacy of biodiversity to our future generation is our ethical duty. So that means, if now this generation is knowing about the species which you are seeing right now, right, but the upcoming generation is also been it is your ethical duty to save the environment, and it is your duty to save your biodiversity, because in order to pass it to the next generation, right? So the future generations may also see all those um, animals as well as the plants, as well as all the different types of biodiversity. Now, these are the points that why should we conserve the biodiversity. Now we are going to see that how you can conserve the biodiversity. So it can be done by two ways. The first is in situ conservation and the second one is ex situ conservation, right? So first we will see about the in situ conservation. So in situ conservation, in order to conserve biodiversity in a better way, some of the world's biodiversity hotspots, that is with high degree of biodiversity and endemicity, have identified and are protected. So in India, biosphere reserves, wildlife sanctuaries, national parks are built for this purpose. So in situ, that means what? That you are conserving the biodiversity, right, with specialized areas, right? That is, you are been providing the same um, area, same type of habitat, as well as the same type of environment to the animals as well as the plants, right? Just like the forest, and same way there are several protected areas are being selected by the government, and the animals as well as the plants are being kept in those areas, right? And those areas are said to be either biosphere reserves or wildlife sanctuaries or national parks, etc. They all are built for this purpose to conserve the biodiversity in a better way, right? Now, you might already have heard about the sanctuaries, right? The bird sanctuaries are also there, as well as the national parks are also there, in which the different types of animals are also kept, right? So, for the birds, there are different sanctuaries, as well as for the different wildlife sanctuaries are also being there. So, this is about the first type of conservation, and that is the in situ conservation, where the animals are being kept in order like in a protected area, in order to identify and protect them, right? And the second type of conservation is the ex situ conservation, where the threatened species of plants and animals are taken out of their habitats and are kept in a special settings, as in zoological parks, botanical gardens, and wildlife parks, right? So the species or plants and animals, right? Those like, if a particular animal or a bird or a plant, if they are being brought up from Australia or some other continent or from some other uh, countries, right? Then they need to keep those plants as well as animals into the special settings, right? That is, they should give the proper amount of environment which in which they were living over there in their own country, right? So in zoological parks, in the botanical gardens, in the wildlife parks, they are being given all this type of special environments and settings, right? Nowadays, what happens? The gametes of endangered species can be preserved viable by methods such as cryopreservation, and can be fertilized in vitro, followed by propagation through tissue culture methods. And similarly, seeds can be preserved in seed banks, right? So now, see, if any of the animals are there, if endangered species is there, right, then the gametes of those species can be preserved, and they can be fertilized by the use of the in vitro processes, that is in the laboratory scale. The fertilization is being carried out, and with the help of the tissue culture methods, they are being grown. And same way, in the seeds of the plants are being preserved inside the seed banks, right? So this is the second type of conservation, that how you can conserve this different type of species of plants and animals. So these are the two ways of conserving. First is in situ and second is ex situ. I hope you are very clear with this chapter. Here we complete this chapter, and I hope to see you again. Thank you.